I'd say the entire town of Corte Madera. Um, Corte Madera demographically, I think, is going through somewhat of a change. Um, there are a lot of older residents who might have been the original homeowners, but we have a lot of new families moving in also, um, as well as everybody in between, singles, other folks. It's a fairly diverse town in terms of ages and incomes. Relatively speaking, it is not um, very racially diverse. It is not diverse in terms of the very lowest socioeconomic demographics. This is Marin, and Corte Madera is kind of representative of what Marin is. Okay, number one issue is finances. The town, is trying to recover from the economic downturn. We came into the downturn with very low reserves. We had, fortunately, invested quite heavily in infrastructure, so that really helped us out during the downturn because we could kind of back burner some of the investments that other towns were having to pursue, things like roadway repairs, flood control. We backburnered a lot of that because our infrastructure is in good shape. But we need to tackle that now, and we need to build up our reserves. So there is a tax measure on the ballot this November. It is a half-cent sales tax, which would bring Corte Madera in line with many neighboring cities. And I certainly hope it passes. Regardless of whether it passes or not, I think we absolutely need to figure out the long-term budget situation. I want a balanced budget, not including any of this additional sales tax revenue. That's the number one issue for me. Other issues include dealing with some transportation issues. I've been heavily involved in the Green Bay Corridor freeway project that the Transportation Authority of Marin Board recently voted down. However, they did vote to support some very serious bicycle pedestrian infrastructure in town, which I think Corte Madera really needs. Our town was divided by a freeway in the 1950s, and it has really kind of hurt the ability of our people in our town to traverse the freeway on foot or by bicycle, especially kids going to school, as well as commuters going to the ferry. So that transportation is a big issue. And then I would say housing. We have our new housing requirement from ABAG that we need to zone for, so we'll need to update our housing element. By law, we have to zone for the housing that ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, mandates for us. It is that mandate that led us to approve the rather large development at the Wind Cup site. The town didn't want to do that, but ABAG gave us an extremely high. Let me just wait for the shopping cart to go by because it's a little noisy. ABAG gave us, still pretty noisy. ABAG gave us an extremely high number that we had to zone for, and we are a tiny town of 2.7 square miles of buildable land. So we wound up with a development that was much too large. Afterwards, ABAG admitted they made a mistake on our numbers. So I'm really happy that that ABAG has listened to us and they've dropped our numbers going forward, and they're much more appropriate. Corte Madera is extremely frugal in a lot of ways. This is just one little anecdote. At the budget meeting last June, where we were deciding on the budget for the next fiscal year, we decided whether or not we were going to spend $2,000 for much needed new chairs in Town Hall for the public, not for the council members, for the public. Sorry, folks, we're not getting the chairs because we decided we wanted to save $2,000. We're going to clean the ones we have and try to get a few more years of wear out of them. Corte Madera really is very frugal. We have historically spent a lot of money in things like maintaining our parks, our roadways, like I said, infrastructure in the ground. Flood control is a huge expenditure. Corte Madera spent millions of dollars on flood control, and we need to do more. So I think Corte Madera has really been very good about how it spent its money, but I think if, going forward, we're going to need to make some tough decisions where we're going to cut back, because cutbacks are going to have to happen. We especially need, like I said, to build up our reserves. So, I hate to say it, but I think some of the extras in town, like, some of our landscaping might not be maintained quite as nicely as it has in the past. We've already cut hours at town hall because we cut staffing by 30%. Do we make further cuts there? I don't know that we can make further cuts in terms of town hall hours. We're pretty minimal right now. But I think the town is well managed in the way it's spent money. It's just whether we need to adjust our priorities, considering what the financial picture is going forward, is something we'll have to keep an eye on. Corte Madera is a small town. Many of us know each other. I don't think there's an issue in that respect. I think our council is very responsive and respectful to the public. There may be a few people in town that like to speak off the cuff, if you will, but I don't think a lack of political correctness is in any way an indication of being uncivil. And how I approach the way I operate on the council is I try to be respectful, I try to be always truthful and operate with integrity, but I think it's important to kind of let people know who I am and where I'm coming from and what I believe, because that's how government officials work best, is when everybody knows what everybody else is thinking. First of all, I think people might believe that town council members have a lot more power than they do, but I suppose mismanagement of priorities would be the thing that would be most risk, maybe how people are treated in town. And I think it's just, like I said, being open and operating with integrity, and just being truthful. And that includes, by the way, the council operating transparently. All of our meetings are open to the public. We invite people to come visit. And I even post my cell phone number on the town website. If people want to contact me, they can contact me. Well, the number one thing that governs, the open government in California is probably the Brown Act. At least that's the one that applies most to council members. One of the main provisions of the Brown Act is, there are two really. One involves being open and upfront about what will be discussed at the meeting. So there are rules about posting an agenda ahead of time in publicly accessible places. And you don't discuss things that aren't on the agenda unless they're of an urgent or an emergency nature. The other one is that council members are only able to discuss policy-related issues with one other council member. You cannot have a quorum in discussion. And a discussion could include emails or serial conversations. For instance, if I spoke to a council member, that council member could not go speak to another council member. So we really don't talk about things outside of council. We certainly don't talk about policy issues unless there's maybe one council member I need to, check in with who might have knowledge or something about some aspect of it that I would like to find out. It's funny, when I first got on council, I thought, well, gosh, this sort of makes things more difficult. Because believe me, if we could decide everything before our meeting, our meetings would go a lot faster. But that would leave the public out of it, and that's not what it's about. I would say the number one aspect of ethics is that I do not participate in any votes or policy making in which I have an interest. For instance, if I own a home and we're considering rezoning it, I would need to recuse myself. Or if my husband's business is up for a contract, I would have to be completely out of the decision-making process. That's not an issue for me because, we're not rezoning my house, and my husband doesn't work in that kind of an industry. But that's the number one aspect of ethics that I think of. It's just ensuring that I don't benefit personally, that what I do is always in the interest of benefiting the community as a whole.